Hey everyone, it's Shawn McBride. I'll be bringing Dr. Ann Gaddy on here shortly. This is going to be a discussion of Bud Light marketing and marketing strategy and really what happened. So we've seen a lot of discussion of this. I've seen a lot of short videos of it. We're going to do something longer today to try to break it down. Hoping some of you will end up joining us live here as you see this pop out on YouTube and Facebook and other channels. So hopefully you'll jump in and join us. If you're not able to catch it live, you can of course join us through the comments and we'll try to respond back to you. We'll probably do something like this again. So I welcome you to subscribe, particularly to the Journey to CEO YouTube channel, where this will be likely be the next time. So let me bring Dr. Ann up. And I think this is just a very timely topic. And I think it's a great case study. I mean, this is a live case study of what's happening. Let's just start. I mean, Dr. Ann, does it look like Bud Light had a strategy when they did this?
Well, first of all, you need it. You should always, anytime you launch anything, you should have a strategy. But my feeling is that because it's such a large conglomerate, and I've done some research and looked at some things, and I'm really not sure they have an alignment between what their values are, what their mission statement is, even what their logo represents. Everything seems to be a little different. And so then you try and roll out this initiative, this marketing initiative, which I've also heard the C-level marketing team didn't even know this was happening. So, I mean, you've got to really work from the top down, and no matter what size you're building a business, really, you've got to know what your core values are. You've got to understand your purpose, and you've got to say, hey, we're going to stand by this. And I think Anheuser-Busch may have lost its way on some of these things. So, when you have a problem like this, a marketing challenge, a marketing problem that it has become, you've got to deal with it. And the fact that it has gone on, over a week, right, Shawn?
It's well over a week. I think we're getting in the 2-week mark. I think this thing started hitting the press about 2 weeks ago. Yeah.
So it's a problem. And, whenever I look at a strategy, no matter what you're doing, you've got to have a pre-launch, knowing why you're doing what you're doing and making sure everybody's on board, which obviously they did not do. And then after that, you launch it, and then you have what I would say is an after action review. So you say what happened, and you've got to have a response. And not everything's going to go right. You and I know that, Shawn. Not everything goes right. So you've got to think, what happens if something goes wrong?
And you're going to have unexpected market responses. That's what they had, right? So this was supposedly a women on beer cans spotlighting women campaign. Of course, one of the women that they picked was controversial, right? So, and that's really what sparked this, right? So I guess maybe some people thought it was just a sleepy little campaign, put the pictures of some women on a beer can and, try to connect with some more women. But the real question is, how does this connect to the broader strategy, right? I mean, the VP of marketing on that podcast that I listened to, which was recorded right before this campaign hit, she's like, I want to break up the fratty image of Bud Light. And I think our marketing, some of our old jokes have been out of touch, and really criticizing where the brand had been. And I get that, people want to reposition their brand sometimes. Maybe your brand today is not what your brand was 10 years ago. So you reposition, you change the way you interface with the marketplace. But what I'm really not seeing here is Bud Light's a huge brand. Call it the Titanic. It needs to turn. If you're going to turn the Titanic, you need a strategy to maneuver this massive vessel, right? I mean, they have distributor relationships. They are in bars and restaurants that are positioned to their market. They've been running commercials to their market, right? There's just all of this alignment. And I know there is some misalignment with Bud Light, but a lot of alignment towards a particular market segment. And then they just throw something in out of left field that doesn't fit with that alignment. And what I don't see is where's the bridge? How are they going to get from where they were to where they're going to go? Right. And that's something you and I talk about in our soon to be released book, Entrepreneur to CEO. You know, you got to build bridges, right? You go from one step to another via bridges. You can't just jump from one to the other.
Well, and you cannot, number one in marketing, you cannot disrespect your customer. I mean, and that's what they did. And when you say build a bridge, I mean, we like to say, okay, here's our stakeholders, here are our customers, here's our base. And then we're going to add to that. You don't want to substitute, which is basically what they thought they were going to do. We're going to just pivot and give up on the frat boys or the, conservative base that is there.
Right.
And not have in place, do they know if these if this market share is going to shift with them? And obviously they're a little worried. Beer industry knows it's competing against, the seltzers and the and the craft beers and the wines. They know all of that.
Right, sure.
But if you have a loyal base, and I think that if they didn't learn anything else, they learned they do have a very loyal base that they gave up on.
Yeah, people expect a certain thing. People were expecting Bud Light for certain things, right? I mean, and you can see, from the TikTok reels that I've seen, because I have, I just started posting more regularly on TikTok. And so when I go in there to do my postings and to review the comments, I see these reels of other people, and
right.
One of the common jokes is, and there's several different versions of it I've seen already where, a man starts drinking the Bud Light and then he turns into a woman. They either use one of the filters or somebody, a guy has his girlfriend, then, holding the Bud Light bottle and they clip it together. Right. But the jokes, that this is basically what Bud Light did, right? They're marketing to men and now they're marketing to women with no bridge, no pathway from one to the other, just like
do they know if women are going to drink this Bud Light?
Right.
I mean, I don't know that they've even done the research to say, hey, yes, this is an audience that's ready to go.
Yeah.
That's where I say, and I look at their values. Their values are ambition, resilience, determination, achievement. What does that mean? I just am not sure. They've got so many different little different companies that I think in some ways they've got to really regroup and determine across all of them, what do we represent?
Yeah, I mean, I think that conversation needs to be had. Like, who are we, right? And every company should be having this conversation periodically, even if things are going well, right? You should be sitting down and saying, who are we? What do we stand for? Well,
here's
our
an
long-term position. Who's our target customer? What's our niche, right? How do we serve the market? And so it's amazing that a company the size of Anheuser-Busch, InBev, Bud Light, brand, why were they not sitting down having conversations about who is Bud Light? What does Bud Light stand for, right? I mean, this seems like business 101 that got missed.
Well, they didn't think about, why are we changing this? Maybe they're concerned about market share, decline in market share. But think about, and we write about this in our book, the Mars Candy Company.
Yes.
One of the most stable companies because they produce Milky Ways, Milky Way bars. So when people buy a Milky Way, they know what they're getting.
Yeah.
They don't want all of a sudden it to be vanilla nougat or whatever. Right. They want it to be what it is.
Well, so many of the massive brands are built that way, right? I mean, and
so
we saw this in the 80s with we saw this in the 80s with Coca-Cola, right? They said, we're going to keep calling it Coca-Cola and we're going to give you something that tastes different. And people said, no, right? You can't just change the taste. Here, they didn't change the taste of the Bud Light, but the alcohol and particularly the beer market is so advertising and positioning driven. They changed the positioning, right? So they said, here, we're selling you a different image. But they did it overnight without, again, the bridge, right? There was no, I'm failing to see the pathway. We've got one
and
demographic we've been marketing to for years, the NFL alignment, all this other stuff they've been doing, and suddenly one day you're saying, oh, well, let's forget about them and let's get more women to drink our beer, but without changing everything.
Well, I don't understand what I don't understand now, 2 weeks out.
Yeah.
That they don't have a response.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
that's the other thing. If something has gone wrong, and if things are going to go wrong, you know that, Shawn.
Oh, yes.
But if something goes wrong, and hopefully it's not caused by you, your own business, which Anheuser-Busch caused their own problem.
Yeah.
But even so, you need to have responses. I mean, even if you have bad Google reviews of your business, you respond to that.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah. And here, I mean, this is massive. Obviously, this is just, and yeah, marketing, and Bud Light's no longer in charge of the marketing here, right? What is happening? YouTube people, TikTok people, commentators from the business press. These are now the people that are in charge of Bud Light's brand, right? These are the people who saying what Bud Light is. You and I are sitting here using this as a business case study, and connecting with other business owners, largely over speculation over what happened. And why do we have to sit here and speculate about the lack of a strategy and a plan? Because nobody from Anheuser-Busch or Bud Light has gotten in front of this, right? They could have come out and said, yes, we are going to be the beer for, women, and that's where we're going, and that's our future, and that's who we are now. They could have come out and said, man, this was a massive mistake. We didn't mean it to come off this way and offend our customers. We're sorry. We remember who we are, and, we just had, maybe one small group of our company run a campaign we don't stand behind, right? I mean, you got to make this kind of decision. I think people are wanting a message from this brand of what happened. Who are you now, right? Because that's really the question. That's why these funny TikTok videos are popping up, because people are saying,
and what are you
who is
going
Bud
to do?
Light?
What are you going to do now with all the bars that I've said they're off our shelves? Bud Light is off our shelves. What are you going to do with that? Do they have any response to that? Do they say, yes, we'll reach out to these people, we'll do anything? The distributors that are sitting there saying, okay, now nobody wants this beer.
Yeah.
Or any of the other in the family of Anheuser-Busch, some of those are getting hit. Yes. So, are you interested in getting that market share back? Or are you just saying, okay, so we lost that, it's okay?
Yeah, I mean, I know it's a behemoth, but I mean, why is this taking so long? And I don't know how Anheuser-Busch is internally organized. From what I understand, this VP of marketing who was, leading this campaign, she lives in New York City. Anheuser-Busch, at least their U.S. headquarters, has been in St. Louis.
Right.
And we all talk about remote working, but this is one of the moments where everybody needs to be in a conference room, right? I mean, there should be a war room in St. Louis or in New York City or somewhere. And I mean, there should be a lot of important people in the Anheuser-Busch companies sitting down saying, okay, this is what happened.
Right.
What is Bud Light? Maybe we didn't have the conversation about how to position Bud Light before this happened. The conversation about how to position Bud Light needs to be happening right now. And that way we can all get together and say, okay, what are we? What do we stand for? And how do we now go back to the market and communicate exactly who we are, and that we're going to be working in alignment with our future, right? That why has this not happened?
I don't know. They should have a what next. And if just my gut reaction would be, I would say to especially you're looking in the South and such, I would be looking at those individuals and I'd say, thank you for reminding us who we are, and recognize that these individuals have, in their response, they have the power. They are the ones that actually are making the decision, as you said, now for Anheuser-Busch. So Anheuser-Busch has really not played their hand very well, but I would think that as they move forward, they would allow this to be a lesson. I think this VP of marketing really was caught off guard. Yeah. And did not understand the culture with which she was working. She did not know how she was communicating with this culture. And she just wanted to be innovative and edgy because that's where she thought, this is the message I was told to do. But fine, be innovative, but don't lose your customer base in the meantime.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the statistics. I mean, I'm sure a lot of Bud Light sold in New York City just because it has such a huge population. There's a lot of bars.
They took a hit too.
Yeah, but I mean, if I looked at Bud Light, I'm guessing, regionally, New York percentage-wise, they probably don't have the same market share as they have in, say Texas or Alabama or Georgia or wherever you want to call it, right? Nashville, yeah. So yeah, one of the big bars in Nashville has said take all this stuff out of here.
Oh, most of them have.
Right. So yeah, you take that. You would think, with knowing all of that, being the VP of marketing, you're thinking about not just how do I appeal to New York City or this New York demographic, but how do I appeal to the people that are buying the alcohol now and the people I want to be buying the alcohol in the future, right? And that's what really seemed to be missing here, is this thought about how the beer should be positioned in the future, but no thought about how the beer is positioned now. And that's why I keep thinking there's no strategy here. This was just a random action to try to get more women to drink beer.
Well, I think that they mistook and misunderstood that the market share they have, the people that are their loyal customers, do not agree with the people they were trying to bring in. When they brought in Mulvaney, the transgen, they did not realize that this was not acceptable to the market share they currently had. Whether or not you agree with that, that's where I think the problem began. Because this group just said, no, we will not accept this. This is not who we are, which tells us something else about business and marketing, that this group that drinks Bud Light thinks of itself as part of the Bud Light family. I mean, this is a group. And wherever they go or wherever, they see fellow Bud Light drinkers, they know sort of what that person is like. Yeah. And that is an identity that is obviously very, very strong. And that's where Anheuser-Busch missed the boat.
Right. And that tells you a lot about the beer branding market, and insiders, I assume, should have known this. But yes, I mean, I think you are picking it up, right? And, it's interesting, I mean, I'll drink beer evenings, weekends, whatever. And it is funny because people will comment on which beer you're drinking, and it does convey certain things. Do you drink a stronger beer? Do you drink a light beer? Do you drink a craft beer? Do you drink an imported beer? And people do put a lot of assumptions on that branding, probably more so than any other product, right? I mean, I don't see this with Coca-Cola. You go to a restaurant, you're sitting at a table, you order Coca-Cola, and people start saying, they comment on the fact you ordered Coca-Cola and what that must mean about who you are, but they will on a beer. And so that marketing and that positioning is even more critical here about that. And so, and here's a company that spends, how many billions of dollars on advertising, right? Budweiser and Bud Light are huge purchasers of TV commercials, online ads, positioning with the NFL, whatever. Buy, spend, and all of this positioning. Yet somehow the marketing director is just like, okay, well, we're just going a different direction without even thinking about that.
It's interesting when you think about it. If you go into a bar, you go into a restaurant, and you're ordering some kind of a beer or alcohol, there is identity next to it because there's so many choices. So people start to have an identity. Oh, so you're drinking this kind of vodka or this kind of wine, or like you say, craft beer, or, you're drinking a Bud Light. But, with oftentimes with the soft drinks, they may just have one distributor. So we're getting all Coke products, or we're getting all PepsiCo products, or what have you. So you don't have that same thing. But with the beers and with the alcohol, there's such variety that there is definitely identity that goes along with it.
And not to
for
mention
a company that is this is their livelihood and this is their whole business, not to know that is unthinkable.
It's shocking, you know, and on the bigger piece of this too, right? Not only what do you order as the consumer, but, you know, particularly with, draft beer, you know, most places only have a limited number of draft beers available, right? There's only so many slots. A regular restaurant might have 4 or 5 draft beers available, you know,
but there are a lot of draft houses coming out. Like,
but I'm saying,
in Pittsburgh, I have one that has 40.
Yeah, right. And they're out there, but your typical restaurant can carry maybe 5 beers.
Right.
And then and you know, a place that's not focused just on alcohol sales, a restaurant, they've only got so much refrigerator space for beer.
Right.
So there's actually a question of, do you even make it on the shelf, right? And that's based on positioning. Right. And Bud Light is in certain bars and certain restaurants because of their positioning.
Right.
And so people have picked to say, I am selling Bud Light here.
Right.
When there's literally now, with all the craft beer craze, thousands of different labels of beer we could have in our refrigerator.
Right.
I'm picking Bud Light to be on my shelf because I think that that's what aligns with the branding and the positioning and the customer experience I want to give my customers in my bar.
Correct.
And now Bud Light just changes it overnight, right? And sends a shockwave through the system. And that's what still confounds me is, you know, did she sit down and think about this? Like, there are bars and restaurants and customers of ours that have been paying for this stuff and making space for it, and they may not want to do that. And these new bars and restaurants that we want to get into that maybe appeal to the women consumer, we haven't even had a conversation about getting on their shelf yet.
Right.
So we're not, we haven't figured out how to do this pivot. We just threw a bombshell out that might lead to a future pivot, but we have no plan on how to pivot.
Well, and you didn't even hit on the sponsorships that are lost. You know, the different country music and maybe NASCAR or some of your companies that are saying, no, we're not going to take the sponsorship from Bud Light anymore. So, you know, it's again, you did not talk to your customer base. You did not think about that. You must not have understood, as you say, marketing 101. But our message to anyone listening to this is, don't do this. Don't do what just happened.
Right. Well, yeah, there's a lot of lessons here. So I think
do your homework.
I think it's a great transition.
Go into those bars and get to know some of the people and understand the consumption of the alcohol, so you can say, oh, this is the kind of person that is supporting our brand.
Yeah. Let's take it to the business lessons. I think that's a great transition. So from what I understand from this woman's comments on this podcast, and I listened to this hour-long podcast. I think it's called At Home or something, right? And this woman interviews people in their home. And so I happened to interview this VP of marketing at Bud Light, you know, a couple of weeks before everything hit. And, you know, she wants to get away from this fratty image and all this other stuff. But, you know, in your business, and she said the brand was in decline. And I think that was a very important thing, right? So
but it's still number one for Anheuser-Busch.
Huh?
It's still number one for Anheuser-Busch.
Right. But I think they were looking at percentage of sales, market share, whatever. Bud Light was having, they were concerned that Bud Light was getting smaller market share over time. They said the brand was declining, was her terms, right? Whatever that meant to them internally. So that they were looking for increasing sales, right? So they want to get more Bud Light out. That's good. Okay. So, you know, in our companies, if we're mapping that and we're saying, okay, you know, we want more sales, and most companies do want more sales.
Right.
You got to say, where am I going to get my more sales from? Obviously, you got to think about your current customers as part of that equation, because they're regular recurring revenue in most cases. But what I don't see here and why we say there probably was a strategy. Nobody sat down and mapped and said, okay, we're in bars, restaurants, running ads, all this tuned into these, frat boy men, I think she called it, or frat boy image. So, okay, that's what we are. That's where we're at. That's, there's no change in the past. If that's what you think where you are. And now she thinks that the woman consumer is the place to be. How do we move from here to there? And do we even move from there? Is it even practical to take a brand that has literally spent billions of dollars to position into a niche and then say, no, we don't want the niche we spent billions of dollars on. We want some other niche. And how many billions of dollars would you actually need to move from niche 1 to niche 2?
Right.
And did somebody actually sit down and do the math and say, well, I think we're going to have to run this many commercials, and we're going to have to do this, and we're going to have to go, or we're going to lose all these bars and restaurants, and we're going to have to go approach all these new bars and restaurants, and we're going to have to maybe change our label to be more woman friendly. Like, who wrote this plan? Where was this plan and the budget to move this?
See, I think they did not realize too, when we talk about, Shawn, that they were putting women on the cans and they were going after the women market. They probably did not realize that once you cross over into the transgen, that this is a very, very hot issue. And there are people that have very strong opinions. It's not just the women. They can put women on the cans. We didn't hear anything about that until it was the transgen. And that's why, too, if you're going to go into a controversial issue, which is what they went into with that, then you better know that you better be able to defend to your stakeholders that this is worth us going into because our values support that. It's worth going into a controversial issue because we know that we are in this arena, that we can make this kind of choice for this kind of engagement because, again, it supports our purpose. But what is the impact going into a controversial thing like this? Mm-hmm. My question would be, what's the impact on your stakeholders? In this case, Mulvaney had a huge impact, negative impact on the stakeholders that Bud Light currently has. And that's where I think you keep saying they didn't sit down and do their homework and strategy. They didn't even think about not even just the strategy, but what will the impact be?
Right. Yeah. Again, it was random action. This appears to be a marketing plan that was just like randomly thrown out there. I think everybody thought it was kind of sleepy. We'll put some women on some beer cans. And I think everybody thought, oh, well, okay, we'll spend a couple, and I mean, whatever they paid these people and whatever. I think everybody just thought it was a little sleepy marketing campaign. But what was missing here, and, and we've kind of alluded to, I keep saying, where's your strategy? Which there obviously wasn't.
Right.
From everything we've seen, there was no strategy. This was just put women on beer cans and maybe some more women will buy Bud Light, which doesn't even seem like a very powerful marketing campaign to me, sitting on the outside. But okay. But nobody sat there and said, we got to be careful about who these people on the beer cans are because we could offend our customers, right?
Right.
There was no connection between the action and the core of the business. And so, that's where this problem came, right?
Impact on your stakeholders. And the other thing, if you listen to the podcast or you listen to the VP of marketing, don't insult your customer base.
Yeah.
To me, I saw a strong opinion that she had, and she wanted to force her opinion on the market. And anybody in fashion retail will tell you that is the wrong thing to do. What you may think is good fashion may not be what your clients want or your customers want. Sure. You cannot just market to your own taste. You cannot market to your own opinion.
Yeah. I mean,
that's what she did.
Well, at the end of the day, I'm sure her paycheck is stamped Anheuser-Busch or InBev, right? And so, she thinks her customer is Anheuser-Busch or InBev, but like most of us, we answer to a broader customer, right?
They are the decision makers.
Right. The people sitting there putting their credit card down night after night saying, give me more Bud Light. That's who she really works for. Right. I
Right.
mean, and,
Exactly.
and yeah, I think, and, at the end of the day, I think I did see the same attitude that you did. I perceived the same thing, which is, I don't like who we're selling to, and I think we should be going for other people. And maybe, and she was saying, well, this women consumer and the younger demographic is where we need to be in the future. Okay, that sounds like a strategy, right? Like we need to get women and younger consumers in. That's strategy. That's the start of a strategy, right? That's an indication of
That's
where
a
you want
goal. That's a
to
goal.
go. But then just throwing a bomb and upsetting all your current customers because you might want to attract some future customers 10 years down the line is crazy.
Well, what are your alternatives? And what I'm thinking is, if that's your goal, that you want to attract women consumers,
Mm-hmm.
or you want to have more white collar consumers, you think that Bud Light is too blue collar, that you need to expand more into the white collar because the craft beers and the wines and the seltzers are taking away from that. Then how about, as an alternative, you look at some of your other beer lines and say, here's a company that would fit better and align better with this particular constituency. Leave Bud Light alone.
Yeah.
And then go and say, here's another product we will roll out for this clientele. And that probably would have been more helpful. And if Anheuser-Busch, and we know Anheuser-Busch does have a large suite of companies, beer companies, breweries, then pick some other ones that you want to highlight and expand in that matter, rather than, oh, we're going after Bud Light. I understand Bud Light has the distribution. I understand it has the production base, but again, they've spent billions, like you said, to get where they are on this. And they've just really killed off a lot that they're going to have to reconnect with. So they're going to have to spend money there. But that money could have gone to another product, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, odds are, if I had been approached with this at the beginning and, I was an advisor to Anheuser-Busch, or even somebody in our workshop came in and had a similar issue on a smaller scale with one of their companies.
Right.
I'm losing market share. I'm not sure I'm positioned for the future. But then they told me about the amount of infrastructure and cost and distribution network and just a massive machine that is behind Bud Light. I would have said, think very long and carefully about trying to make any major changes to that brand, particularly in a short period of time, right? You've got infrastructure here.
Right.
This label is associated. You've spent billions of dollars of advertising. You're in certain bars and restaurants. You've got distributors moving this product. Like, it is positioned, right? Bud Light is positioned. It's established brand.
It is established with a history. Yes.
Yes. And so if I want to appeal to a new market segment, to me, the more obvious choice is to launch a new brand or to take a smaller brand that is maybe struggling and reposition it.
Right.
I'm not going to take a stodgy, established brand, which we know now we've got the market proof. Like, this is an established brand. People have images in their head of what Bud Light is, what Bud Light should stand for. Whether you agree with it or not, it's in their heads. This is Bud Light.
Well, and the consumers have clarified in a very loud, vocal way what that identity is.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I think and I'm with you. Why Bud Light and Anheuser-Busch have been under a rock for 2 weeks and just pretending like nothing happened and letting the market run wild is a thing. There needed to be emergency meetings a week ago, 2 weeks ago, saying we need to communicate something to the market, and now we're gonna reach in our pocket. We may not have had this in our budget right now, but we're a big company. We can move money around. We need to run a campaign to say what's happening here, right? Who are we and what do we stand for?
Well, and I think that that takes, for a company to do that takes some real bravery, some strength. We've seen that in the airline industries when they commented and said, the CEO said, I know this has been a problem. I am sorry about this. And they've come out and apologized, did a mea culpa. But I do think that the longer they go, the more comments are being made by business analysts, by marketing analysts who are saying, why is there no response? And so that is keeping the story alive in a negative way.
Yes. I mean, we might or might not be talking about this right now if they had come out and communicated, right? They could have killed this. The topic of our topic was there a marketing strategy at Bud Light? Well, if they had come out and told us whether there was a marketing strategy and just said, hey, we made a mistake, or no, we are now, women's beer. One communication or the other, we would know who they are. But now everybody's got this fodder and communication. And for us, I think the reason you and I picked this topic is it's just such a powerful lesson for the business owners that you and I regularly work with, right? Here is a case study of what not to do.
Well, and it's really a shame that we're so close to publication. I mean, the book is written, Entrepreneur to CEO. Boy, we would have had this one right in there. It would have been right in next to Blockbuster and the other ones that we put in there. But it is absolutely unexcusable that they have not respected the clientele of Bud Light and come out and admitted that this should not have occurred in this manner, that this was, like you said, they thought it was going to be a sleepy little campaign, just a little bit for women drinking beer. But then you use the major transgen influencer on the can, and she's doing her social media with that.
Yeah.
It shows a couple of things. It shows that social media is powerful. We have to be careful that when we get into controversy, in a heartbeat of a second, social media can go nuts with it. So you really have to be very intentional in what you're doing and understand that if something goes wrong, you've got to have a response. You've got to think about what could go wrong before.
Yeah, I want to welcome our viewers to comment as we kind of put our final thoughts in here. I think the other thing I'm thinking through this process is, you got to be very careful that you don't substitute your values, your decision making, whatever's in your head for what's in your customer's head. And here, I think maybe, again, this is pure speculation just based on what I've seen, but this marketing lady who is, again, resident in New York City, when a lot of her customers or a lot of her market share is not resident in New York City, she's kind of, politically aligned wherever she's politically aligned. And maybe she didn't even think it was a big deal to put a transgendered person on a beer can as a woman. To her, it was like, yeah, this is a woman. And her customers are telling her, we don't agree with your line of analysis.
She thought she was being edgy and innovative, and she knew darn well this transgen was an influencer, but she, again, did not think about her customer base.
Right. And so we need to constantly think about that in business. And if we have, like Bud Light claims a declining market, or we're not happy with our sales forecast, or not happy with the direction, we need to be thoughtful about how to get where we want to go and build a strategy. And, they certainly should have had outside advisors in here. I mean, I'm shocked too that a company like Anheuser-Busch InBev with such a large, massive budget, isn't running, even these kind of semi-routine decisions past their marketing company, right? There should be an outside voice. And somebody should have raised the flag when they said, let's do this women in marketing campaign. They would have said, okay. And then when they said, here's our 100 women, because I think that's what it was, 100 women in 100 days. When they said, here's our 100 women, one of them is this, transgen influencer, the marketing company should have raised a flag and said, hey, you might spark some controversy here. Is this really where you want to go? Where's the checks in a company like Anheuser-Busch InBev? And for small companies, you can't hire a massive outside marketing company. But you could go to a workshop like the ones that you and I are getting ready to launch. And if you're getting ready to make a major shift in your business, you run it by other business owners,
right?
Run it by other advisors and say, do you think this is a good idea? What issues do you see? I mean, I think we're all susceptible at different points to our own blind spots.
Right, of course.
And I think this here might be just a blind spot of this marketing VP in New York City. She didn't see that putting a transgendered woman on a beer can was even a controversy. She just thought, oh, this is great.
Well, I think that Anheuser-Busch needs to rethink its communications up and down the corporate ladder.
Yes.
Because the fact that the C-suite marketing team says, oh, we didn't even know about this is a bigger problem. And why I would say to any entrepreneur or business owner, no matter how large or how small, we try and have business owners start to delegate and move away. That's how they become CEOs. But at the same time, there's got to be a consistency and a way of monitoring whatever the voice is, whatever the message is, so you don't have this kind of misalignment going on, which is what this VP did. She was not in alignment with the rest of the company.
Again, it's delegation, but delegation with purpose, delegation within your culture. If I'm going to delegate somebody to answer the phone for, say my law firm, I want somebody who's going to answer the phone politely and professionally,
right,
and treat the person on the other end of the line with respect. Right, that's who we are.
Right.
I don't just delegate that, hand the phone to somebody and say answer it, and the next thing I know, they're shouting obscenities at people when they call the law firm. Right. I mean, that's just not what I'm going to tolerate. And this appears to be maybe a bigger issue with delegation with Anheuser-Busch too, right? She's a VP of marketing, VP. She's not even the president of marketing. There's somebody above her.
Right.
I haven't heard anything from that person. And there's people above that person. So the
infrastructure failed them.
Yeah, their structure of checks and balances within the company completely failed here. This should not have ever happened at this scale without them having a full marketing plan. Even if the plan was, yes, we're going to do this, somebody should have said, hey, this might cause a lot of market ripples. What are we going to do when everybody starts running their TikTok videos showing men changing into women, right? I mean, that should have been a question in St. Louis or New York or wherever these decisions are made.
Yeah. And it keeps going. That's the thing. They have not stopped it. And that's why I say the response needs to be in place so that you stop the spread of the wildfire.
Yeah. I've been doing YouTube shorts and TikToks on this for 2 weeks, and, new information keeps coming out and new angles on this keep coming out. And it stays hot because it's really a puzzle. Everybody's trying to figure out
why there's no response.
Yeah, and when are they going to talk? What are they going to say? So I think that's a lot of great lessons in there, Dr. Ann. I want to welcome people to subscribe to our Journey to CEO channel on YouTube. We've been putting out somewhat regular content. I expect we'll have more coming as our book gets into launch phase. That Entrepreneur to CEO book, which helps people on that journey from becoming just an entrepreneur, somebody who owns a job, to somebody who really owns a business that runs itself. It's more of an enterprise. And try to help people avoid these pitfalls, particularly through the workshops, right? I mean, it's, having the core ideas is there, but you also need that outside thought. And you can see here, Bud Light has told us what happens when you don't bring an outside thought.
Well, they need to be in our workshop.
Yeah, they do. I mean, we're really looking for that small or medium-sized business owner, but I tell you what, these big companies need it too. And you can see they're not investing. So, Yeah, I mean, they need to pick up the phone and call some people and get some outside viewpoints, because wow, they just kind of just ran themselves into a problem here that they're going to have to dig out of, and they need to start digging now.
Yeah, they should have dug last week.
Yes, they should have been digging, from the moment this thing hit hit the markets. As soon as it started going crazy, they should have been digging. But if they're not digging yet, now's the day to start digging.
Yeah.
So, all right. Thanks for joining me, Dr. Ann. Thanks for tuning in, folks. I know a handful of you tuned in live. Saw some people pop in and out. But I know some of you are going to see us on recording. Do feel free to join us in the comments. We love to read that. If you have ideas for future videos or topics, let us know. And we hope that we can join you in the comments and help you on your journey from being an entrepreneur to being a CEO. Thanks, everybody.